Welcome to Spirit Squared. I'm Andrew Darington, the host. Tell you a little bit about me real quick. I grew up in northern Louisiana and transferred over here to East Texas. And so we get the unusual benefit of hosting this podcast at the Beckham Hotel, which is in Mineola, Texas. It's a historic hotel, and we're thankful for the owners of the hotel for letting us do our podcast here today. I've got a couple of folks that I really want to thank. Josh Pogue is our producer, and Miss Amy Corley from the Rawls Team is sponsoring us tonight, and I really want to appreciate her. If you have any real estate needs, please reach out to her at 903-279-8943. Someone else that I'd like to thank is Stars and Staves. They did this shirt, and I think they did a great job on it. And I really appreciate them and what they do. They're located in DFW, and you can find them online. So Spirit Squared, what are we going to be doing in this podcast? So we want to introduce our audience, our listeners, to a spirit first. So talk a little bit about the distillery, where it's located, maybe where they source their grains, et cetera, et cetera. And then we're going to move on to a subject matter expert, someone who's very passionate, and we're going to focus on their spirit. We really want to bring out what they are passionate about, what they do for a living, or what they just really enjoy. So for tonight, we're going to focus our podcast on the distillery of Balcones, which is located in Waco, Texas. So here we are in Mineola, Texas. We're supporting a great institution like Balcones, and we have a subject matter expert or a historian in some ways that's going to spend some time with us, introducing us to some of their releases and talking a little bit about their history. So I want to thank you, Chris, for coming on and being our first guest. So the guinea pig, if you will, of our podcast. I've known you for a couple of years. You know that Balcones isn't the first thing I grab in my liquor cabinet.
Right.
As I've spent time doing research and really kind of getting into their business and their history and their collaborations, it's almost like their spirits have gotten better when I pour them.
Right.
It's so interesting that I enjoy it now that I know how much labor of love they've put into their products. So let's get unpacked first on the history. When did they start? Who were some of the key players?
Okay, yeah. So Balcones is in Waco. A lot of people call it Balcones. Well, we actually had a good discussion about that the other day on our Cult of Balcones Facebook group. Wouldn't check it out. There's a lot of cool stories there. A lot of cool people. We'll get to that later. But so Balcones, Waco, Texas, started in 2008. There were 3 founding members. One, from my knowledge, basically the silent partner, but the 2 main guys that started, Chip Tate, Jared Hinton. They started in a 2,500 square foot old welding shop underneath a bridge. And I mean, that's just, think about it, to have to run a distillery. I mean, that's the size of people own.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's crazy to think that they were able to push out the kind of product they were in the volume they were just out of a small little home essentially.
Right.
And there's actually some really cool videos that you can go on YouTube and look at. They have like kind of some insight of what that warehouse still looks like today with a lot of the old stuff still in there. It's really cool. So Chip and Jared had a vision. They were brewers. They worked at a local brew house.
Right.
And they were like, we like drinking alcohol, so we're gonna start drinking some scotch. And they got into scotch, and they really appreciated the single malt. And they're like, I think we could, maybe do our little spin on it. So they started to delve into, the sides behind what would make a good single malt. And eventually that became like their primary drive was an American single malt. So going to now, I mean, you can tell that when you drink one of their single malts, all of the blood, sweat, and tears that went into that product, I mean, it is just full of love.
The guys are like scientists.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. practically are just mad scientists because, I mean, you make beer and all of a sudden you're making whiskeys that make, who knows how many awards they have now. I mean, it's got to be over 100.
Yeah. How many distilleries changes the size of the staves to increase the flavor of a single malt or really anything?
I mean, they have just. I was watching a video recently where who was it? Gabe was mentioning that just like you said, the thickness thing, they let them just kind of field age for 3 years versus 6 to 12 months is what you typically get out of Kentucky, Indiana, kind of that area.
Right.
Spirit, they let theirs age for 36 months just out in the sun. They get up shaved. They let them. I mean, they have it's crazy the amount of just different details they get into. They have all these different char levels, all these different toast levels, different heads. Everything is custom made, custom tailored to them. They pay more for it, and it shows off of their product.
Yeah, like in Kentucky, you have hundreds of years of making similar, almost the same product. You have pretty predictable conditions.
Right.
You're going to have cold winters and warm to not as warm as here, but and so they're battling that too. These fluctuations in climates that we have over 100 degrees over a season.
Right. I mean, here, but just going back to the temperature school today, we can see just in one day, and it's not a 30, 40, 50 degree temperature drop in some of the wild parts of the season. So we're barely going through a lot of fresh food. There's a lot of extreme to it that really influences the spirit.
Yeah, sure. So, Chip becomes a thing of the past in 2014, and we transition to 2015. Some great products, or some of the last products, right, of being under the bridge come about.
Right. So in 2015, from my understanding, is when Jared was pretty much like the go-to for the entire distillation process. I mean, he saw it from start to finish, and I mean, he's the master behind what they have going on. There's a lot of other folks that are behind the scenes as well, but
sure,
Jared for sure was the one that's leading the pack on that. They, it's kind of funny. I don't really have much from 16. I've actually never had one bottle from 2016 that I've ever had. It was a Newport Bourbon single barrel, which was a really unique one. So that's the only bourbon single barrel made there done. And so that's the only one from 16 that I've had. And 17, it seems like, is when a lot of their products finally hit that age where Jared was like, you know what? This is stuff was it. Like, this is exactly everything I could have hoped and dreamed for, because when we taste that 17 True Blue Castro, you're gonna realize just how much passion he puts into the spirits.
Sure. So they find a building, right? They need to expand. That's part of the reason why they brought in an investor. And so they expand in that realm, right? In 2016, 2017?
Man, I want to say it was before 16, because 16 is when they opened up the new storefront that you go to now.
I see.
That's when it was available to public to go to. You can go there, distillery tours. I think it's like $10 to go in there to do a tour.
Right.
I like to go there because, I mean, they give you $50 worth of drinks.
Oh, sure.
I mean, they let you taste basically everything that they had available, with the got a little surprise visitors too. I mean, so it's a really cool deal. But I think it's that 30,000 square feet long.
It's large.
I can't remember.
The last thing I read was 25,000, but it's probably bigger.
Yeah, I mean, it almost has to be. I mean, it almost has to be. But everything they do happens there. They have those two giant grain silos outside.
Right.
One of them has their blue corn, which I'm not really sure if it still comes from New Mexico, because at one point it was all sourced from New Mexico, and at one point they were sourced from Texas. Could be a blend of both. Not really sure when that break part happened, but either way, you have blue corn and one. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So they're massive. You can't. It's kind of like the full thing. Wherever you pull up, and you see them right there.
Right. And then they have two areas. They have that area, and then they have another area they store barrels.
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of the area that we go into, like the vault. You can kind of see, like, right when you walk into the right, have a big line of stuff. Sure, I'm sure there's way more in the back. I mean, I haven't been to that part of the distillery yet, but they got pretty big beer guys. So just have others. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. So hit me with some past releases that, like, the people that are very passionate about Balcones have been just like, and we use the word unicorn, right? In the whiskey bourbon game. So kind of walk me through a couple of those releases that were so limited, or they were very unique, or they're just ones that fans just go crazy about, either even getting just a pour of.
Right. So, I mean, we could go back to the 5th anniversary releases. Everybody who loves Balcones loves the 5th anniversary stuff because it's almost like a dream, because nobody has really had much of it, because there wasn't very many produced at all.
Mm-hmm.
So if you kind of bring it a little more forward to the 10th anniversary stuff, and around that era when they really started to have just a incredible reputation and great brand built into themselves. In 2018, they did, I want to say, 14 unique releases for their 10th anniversary. They all have this really cool 10th anniversary label on them.
Yeah, I brought some of them.
Yeah, they got the wheated bourbon from that year. It's amazing. One of my favorites.
And this French oak as well.
Yeah, the French oak is also. This was a 2018. So we'll touch on that one here in a second. Of those releases of 2018, they did 2 single barrel brimstones. And so there's a lot of folks that look after the brimstone. Basically, the history of brimstone was it's a corn whiskey, and they burnt the corn to trash, basically. And they were like, well, let's try it in a way to see what.
Per the folks on the ground. Or the folks on the ground are telling you that is what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
And I'm like, well, Bert, let's just see what it tastes like. Anyway, we already, spent all this time and money, I guess, investing in it. Let's just see what happens. And it turned out to be a smoke show, man. I mean, it's powerful. Like, when you taste brimstone, it's smoky and sweet. But I mean, if you're not a smoky drinker, you're gonna want to steer clear of the brimstone for sure. Sure. Some releases are more smoky than others. That's a really good thing because it is an annual release.
Right.
So you have those different nuances that go from year to year, but typically it's a rather smoky drink.
Right.
You'll be tasting it the next month, for sure.
Right. So, like, I asked for top 5. You got a lot of different.
Our top 5.
Like, I follow the page, right? The Cult of Balcones.
Yeah.
A big page that a lot of followers follow to get tips on, like, this is great. This is not. Look at this label. This was a decent release, but this one's better.
Right.
Just like you do with Kentucky whiskeys,
right?
And bourbons. I'm looking for a certain rye, or I'm looking for a certain bourbon. Tell me, who's someone who doesn't dive into this too much, if I'm at a supermarket and there's nothing but Balcones in it, and I'm looking for 2 or 3 bottles that are going to be ones that I can show off to people that are in your realm.
Right.
What am I looking for?
So that's the great part about it, man, is because they are very forward now with their single barrel program. And Alex Elrod manages that road. Sure. Yeah. Yep. Not sure his official title, but I mean, he's a single barrel guy. He's the one that really want to do a barrel pit with your club. Yep. You have a private club, or I guess if you just want to foot the bill for a barrel yourself, I mean, he's the guy you contact.
I've picked a barrel without Alex. And what was awesome about it is Alex is, great guy. He came in, he had 3 spirits. He didn't have it labeled, which I thought was amazing. I like blind tasting.
Right.
Because it's the most relevant to what people like.
Right.
You're placing judgment on what's in the bottle. And we picked a single malt, which I thought was amazing. It almost had like almost an old fashioned, like, just cherry flavoring to it that kind of went into the vanilla and cream, and it won out of there. I think there were 8 of us there. But number 2 was the rum. It's twice distilled. I mean, and it's my favorite rum that I'm gonna if I can get it off the shelf, I'm going to get it if I see it.
Yeah, their Texas rum is absolutely incredible. The first time I ever tasted it, it was almost just a mind trick because I was reading rum, and I didn't really ever delve down deep into rum. So the first thing that came to mind off of the color was spiced rum.
Right.
Just because I never really got into rum. I like their single malt. I like their wood corn. And so I tried it. It tastes like rusky. In a blind taste. Sure. It tasted like whiskey. Mouthfeel, steak, but it was just awfully sweet for it to be a whiskey, or even a single malt. And I just could put my finger on it. I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I love it. And it turned find out it was the right.
Yeah.
They
I got us off track. I went into Alex. You brought up Alex. I've had experience with Alex because, I love that. But you were talking about, we brought up a supermarket. I'm looking for stuff. Kind of mentioned Alex.
Yeah, I would. But there's so many single barrel releases. It's really hard to say, hey, this is going to be the one that really tickles everybody. But one that will always be a crowd pleaser is going to be the Texas One Single Malt.
Mm-hmm.
It's 53%, and it's signified by a little red wax sticker that lets you know that it's available all the time, every day. And it's made in small roads, essentially. They do 3 or 4 different batches of it per year.
Mm.
That was always going to be a crowd pleaser. It's consistent, it's affordable, and it's the one that wins them just tons of awards because of just how great a product. True Blue 100 is another really good one.
Mm-hmm.
Rumor on the street is it has been discontinued if it hasn't already been. I remember seeing a post on that on Walmart pages as well that they're discontinuing it. It's one of my absolute favorite daily drinkers. 100 proof, blue quarter. I don't think I brought any notes with me, but
Yeah, you brought the cash string.
oh yeah, I brought the cash stream. That's right. Yeah. There's just too many. I literally spent an hour just staring at, because I have, about 150 bottles of alcohol just sitting at the house. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to bring that is just going to really would let him deeply dive into what this Texas Spirit is all about.
Sure.
Their Rye 100 is really good. It's also 100 proof. That one is being discontinued. To my understanding, it's going to be replaced with a Ballin and Bond ride, which is really cool. If you're familiar with the Big Baby shirt of Ballin and Bond, that was aged for, I believe it was 5 years in tequila cast. It's going to be the same label design. I look at TTB, so I kind of cheat. So that's kind of where I got this information from. But the Rye is the exact same bottle or label design as the Big Baby. It's just good.
So for the listeners that don't know, what is TTB?
Oh my goodness. What does that stand for? The TTB is the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau. And so basically you can go on this website, and if you can perform a basic search, you can actually look up labels that different distilleries across the United States have offered. A lot of times they'll be missing the proof or the percentage, they'll just have kind of a place in there just to say, hey, some of them can say 0, so it kind of throws you off. But it's just kind of a placeholder that they have to submit the label to, make sure all the verbiage is accurate, per the regulations, things like that. You can look up labels of things that are cheat code, right? It's a cheat code to see, when it's coming out. So, I've done that, and the label, man, it's so cool. Big Baby, it's a completely different design of all of their other stuff. Which it should be, because it is a new product. It's Ballin and Bond, which is the first time they do these. So that's all labeled Ballin and Bond.
Right.
So it's completely different. Their text is the same, but you'll just have to look it up yourself to actually see what I'm talking about. The label's not real cool.
So let's talk about what you brought. We've got a smorgasbord of probably things that people look for or that you would champion on a page of some kind. And, we're not going to, Kentucky pages, right? We're going to Texas,
right?
Pages. And the thing about that page that I've noticed so much is that the people there are so passionate about the product and about the lineage. We even have a bottle name lineage that's top seller. It's the #1 American malt whiskey, right?
Oh man,
Seller.
yeah, it is
incredible.
I mean, when they released that product, I was like, well, I'm not big on the lower proof stuff. It's just not something I typically gravitate towards. I like, a full lunch of a face. I like to have that lingering, bold, thick castor or. So they released it. I was like, oh, well, it's Balcones, so it has to be good. I try a bottle, and I'm pretty sure I have a case of it sitting in my house, right? Was it next to True Blue 100? It is, right. It's a daily drink for everybody. And I mean, everybody, that would be the bottle that I would recommend first. Anybody to get.
For anybody transition.
Yeah, anybody who wants to, or try the Balcones and is just maybe a little uneasy about, the Texas 1 single malt, because I think the price point on it's $60-65. Lineage you can get for around $40. And so it is a little bit more approachable. And I mean, you're not going to be missing out on.
And it's on your shelves. It's on your shelves.
On shelves.
Where you're not having to ask a manager or figure out if it's behind the counter hidden, or you don't have to develop this, kind of relationship with somebody over 10 years to gain access to limited release.
That's another really good thing about Balcones too is typically you have just a regular store here we have Goody Goody. Yeah, we can go to Harley's, what we have in Malview, Specs, Total Wines, all that stuff. Sure. Balcones isn't allocated. Sure. And they may find the one random store they're like, oh, well, I've never seen this label before. We only got one bottle of it, so it must be allocated. But typically, everything that Balcones offers is available on shelves, minus their exclusive.
Right, that's allocated. For folks that don't know, allocated means limited release, or the store only gets a certain amount, and the favorite customers or the customer with points or the customer who's kind of done business with Joe for 10 years gains first access or first right of refusal. And so allocated means they just get a certain amount of allocation, depending on what that store sells.
Right.
So if the store sells a ton of Mickners, for example, then they get maybe some of their limited releases allocated to them.
Right.
In this case, most of these are available on shelves.
Right.
And some of the limited releases, the Balcones staff rewards folks to come to the distillery, know when some of those releases are done by their Facebook posts.
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely. They're really good about doing not even advertising, just private releases at the distillery. I mean, you don't really know about it. Sometimes they don't even post them on their Facebook page. It's kind of like, hey, we're going to take care of our loyals and say, you come in here, you may see something on the shelf that's crazy.
Right.
Right now they have a 98-month American single malt.
Wow.
And I mean, that's reaching out there for, being here in Texas and being in one barrel for that long. I mean, I'm dying to get my bottle. It is on the way as we speak.
I'm not going to ask you how to get here, but I'm sure it's good here.
Yeah, it's good.
Right. So let's dive into what you brought today. I'm interested in getting in a couple of these. I've heard a lot about them. I've done some research on a few of them. Personally, I'll probably never see any of these bottles again. But so I selected the Texas wheated bourbon. Being a traditional Kentucky bourbon drinker, that's probably going to be a good lane for me to start. Even though I've tasted a couple of them over the last week as I've done research, and they've just kept improving. The couple that I have, which is my I don't have the 150 bottles you have. I have 3.
Right.
And so I have the wheated bourbon that I'm going to try, and you have.
I actually have the wheated bourbon as well. I poured myself the same thing. I was really looking forward to trying this because I knew wheated was your wheelhouse, and so I wanted to at least bring something that I knew you would enjoy that you may not have had before. So this one here is from 2018. This was their 10th anniversary release. The wheated bourbon you can actually only purchase at the distillery. So they do 3 different bourbons. They do a blue corn bourbon. They do the Texas wheated bourbon, and they do a high rye bourbon. Now, I think it was last year they released it's a red bottle or red label, excuse me, with the red dot, and it's their pot still bourbon, which is kind of more of an entry level.
Mm-hmm.
It's lower proof. I want to say mid-40s. I'm not really sure.
Right.
It's not typically
mid-40s alcohol by value.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And then the bottle's $30, $35.
Right.
It's not one that I would typically gravitate towards because when it comes to their bourbons, I like the cask strength punch. I recommend people also trying to know if they typically lean towards bourbons, it's a good one to start off on. I would still make a recommendation with lineage. This one here, I mean, it's just your typical wheated bourbon. 31% of that is going to be, I think it's Texas red wheat. Yeah, Texas red winter wheat and 18% golden promise malt barley. So
it has a sweet smell to it. When you taste it, it's creamy vanilla flavoring, and then the finish is just forever. I mean, it is, and it's consistent. It doesn't fade away. The full flavorness just kind of continues on.
That's what sucked me a little to Balcones in general was not only do you get that bulk punch that I was always looking for, because I mean, when I first started getting into the listings, I was drinking things, and there's nothing wrong with these products, but I've obviously transitioned more towards cask strength then. But I was drinking things, like TX, whiskey, just super basic entry level stuff, just to save everybody to name them all. But I've been like Woodfield Reserve, things like that.
Right.
It's just just entry level kind of basic stuff. And I was like, oh wow, I can taste this. Well, when I first started getting into Balcones, I mean, just the depth that they have in their flavors is, to me, is second to none.
Yeah, it's an intense roller coaster of flavors and pulling different things out. That's what I've experienced too.
Absolutely, because I mean, it just, the flavor just goes on and on. It seems like you could just overthink it, overcomplicate it, and just dissect it for 2 or 3 minutes after you take a sip. But really, I mean, there's just typically 4 or 5 notes that will just pop up right up at you, and you just get to sip on it and enjoy it and relax it.
Yeah. Are there any bottles that you would say are probably the most limited in existence? Meaning there's just, if you were to, do an inventory, there's just not a lot left.
Not a lot left. Talking shelf-wise?
No, I'm just talking in general. I mean, obviously I'm talking about releases.
So if we were going to do that, I'm sure there's a few folks that still have quite a bit of, so in 18, going back, I mean, that was such a huge year. I mean, every single bottle they released for their 10th anniversary was a banger. Every last one of them. There wasn't one that was just like, oh, it's decent. Every single one, hit after hit. I could not wait till the next month to my ID renew to go back and buy the next 2 releases what they had. It was just an incredible year. But it would be those 2 brimstones for sure. Super. They were single barrels, of course, and it was part of their. I think it was later on in the year did those releases, and then the following year they released Juntos, which is kind of like a brother to Brujeria and Hecheceros of the same year. So.
You're going to have to break those down.
Yeah, so off the top of my head, I hate to admit that I can't remember which one is which, but one of them was finished in a sherry cask, and the other one was finished in a...
I think the Bucheria, and I think that was the sherry of Oriole, or PX, and or Oriole cask, yes.
And the other one was a port cask.
Right.
And then...
or we may have that.
Yeah, I mean... It's a coin toss at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, I've drank a lot in slips since I read those bottles.
Sure, of course.
There was in 2019, they released Juntos, which to my knowledge was the first American single malt they did finished in a tequila cask. And I, unfortunately, have never even got to taste it with those. Oh, I have a bottle that's Australia exclusive that I was able to get, but I can't even get a bottle of Juntos.
Right.
I've tried. I've looked for it. I know certain people have, 10, 12 bottles of them stashed away. Sure, it's not coming off of them because it's just such an incredible spirit from everything I've heard.
Yeah. And we both know, tequila's really gaining a lot of, market share. it's the hottest thing
Right.
in the spirit world right now. So, I mean, it's not going away. I don't think you're going to get a Juntos. Sorry.
No, I don't think I'm going to get a Juntos either. That Big Baby, have you tried that one?
Yeah.
That word,
Yeah.
you know, when I first tried it, I mean, I honestly didn't like it. You know, I was like, this is just not my thing at all.
Right.
I was really looking forward to it, had a lot of hopes for it. I was like, man, this just isn't for me. And I let it breathe. I talked to you about tequilas, you know, and you just kind of, you know, just giving me some pointers and things to look at. And, you know, I really started to just think about those things that you had mentioned. And while I was drinking it, and it really just made a few little key things pop here there whenever I was drinking it. And it's almost like a margarita in a drink. I mean, it tastes like lime. I mean, it's salty, like a rock salt almost. I mean, it's incredible. It almost tastes like a cocktail, like just straight out of the bottle, right? A 50% cocktail, if you will. And I mean, it's a really good pour. It's hard to find.
Right.
That's a very hard bottle to find. And when you call
I've seen it from time to time in Longview.
That's why I asked you to
After you put out the photo and say, do you want me to pick it up?
absolutely. When I saw that picture come through, I was like, you clear the shelf.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. That was great looking out.
All right, so what are we going to have next? Or I'm on to the next. I'd like to try one more, and then we'll get into what we've got going on. Or what's one that I need to try that you mentioned the Rumble, you mentioned the rum.
Yeah, so
I've never had the French Oak. That's pretty interesting to me.
so the French Oak is kind of going back to one of those super coveted releases. So the first French Oak labeled Balcones was done in 2014. Super limited. I don't even know how many bottles were made, but it wasn't a lot. During the Revolt sale a couple years ago, I had the opportunity to buy one if I was in the right spot in line.
Right.
And I mean, there was a dude camping out for hours. Yeah, I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
And he was camping out for hours before they opened up.
Yeah.
And was able to secure one, and the guy behind him was able to secure the other. So, I mean, it's good for them because it's a bottle that I've heard nothing but great things about. 2018, they have a 2019 as well. And kind of a little Easter egg wherever that box is, you know, each one of their label designs has a unique, distinctive mark on there. You know, has a little corn stalk for their annual release True Blues. You've got a hammer, which signifies that it is a single barrel. We kind of along the same lines here. Those little vertical lines, you know, kind of signify that that's going to be a rum. Well, here you have that. What is that little? So you're leaving the little.
Oh, that's a fleur de lis.
Yeah,
Fleur de lis.
yeah.
Well, that's the French part of the oak.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what makes it, you know, French oak. Well, when we bought this 10-year bottle of rum at the Rum Fest, if you pull it out, you know, it's highlighted with obviously that indicating mark. When you pull it out, oh, well, this one's next. And then you have these two guys, which really mean this one here is the one that's throwing me for a loop. I don't know if y'all can see that on the camera, but each one of these signifies, in my opinion, this is kind of like an Easter egg of what's to come for the 15th year stuff.
Okay.
So this one's highlighted. So I take that shirt. It's this relief. This piece here.
Yeah.
And
French oak.
I feel that the next one is going to be a French oak.
Yep.
And it's going to be kind of a gold label.
Right.
And the reason I think that these are in fact Easter eggs is because obviously there's four sides to a square. And when you have four of these boxes lined out, that makes a really cool, just
It makes it
linear display.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really think that they were really clever in this, if that is in fact what the idea was behind it.
It's just another layer of the, you know,
Yeah.
the fun that
absolutely.
distillery does.
I mean, they keep it fun. I mean, they keep all of their local folks just totally in tune of what's going on. I mean, they're huge in their communities. They have events there all the time that support all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's just a really cool deal.
So which one should I taste? The Rumble. You've been talking a lot about the Rumble. You already said I really like the rum. You know, this is obviously a single barrel. I've never had a single barrel.
I would probably say, because of the weakest ones, I want to say that this one's going to be it next to, this is that Portugal, the one from Australia. We can deep dive into that here in a minute. I would say go into this one next.
Yeah,
it's going to be a little bit sweeter.
I'm super intrigued with the Rumble. Cash Reserve. It's pretty warm.
Yeah, it's pretty warm. I almost brought a hazmat because I have a 70.8 of it.
Right. So we're coming in at 132 here. That's one thing Balcones does not shy away from is putting plenty of proof in their bottles. And so I was reading up on Reddit on some older posts, and there was a lot. This was 6-7 years ago. There was a lot of feedback that, hey, there's a lot of proof in these bottles. It came across really smoky, intense, and I think that the brand manager at the time, he did a great job. Almost every response was thoughtful, and it was I thought very targeted at the fact that, hey, we make it with this amount of intensity because of the barrels, the ingenuity of our distillers and our team, and you can proof it down. Right. You can add a couple drops, and in some cases, it opens up a bouquet of a lot of different flavors that weren't intended. Right. But it opens the person that is drinking it to consume it in the level they want or feel comfortable in doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I think is really cool.
But you can't do that with lower proof.
Exactly.
If you do it to something that's already 86 proof, then, you're getting close to vodka and tequila realms.
Right.
So, yeah, why not finish it at a higher proof and let folks kind of choose what their zone is.
Right. And see that, I don't know if it's what's one of their main drivers, but I feel with the amount of things that come out at cask strength, they don't really want to just bastardize a lot of their stuff. I mean, that's why another thing, they do a lot of single barrel stuff. Obviously, they don't want to proof down single barrel. Some places do that, and cool. I mean, it could end up tasting great, but they don't proof down their single barrel stuff. Right. It is what it is when it comes out, and that's what you're going to get. And like you said, it opens it up for literally anybody to be able to enjoy it and drink it. If you drink it, you're like, oh, it's a little too hot. Like you said, throw some water in there and enjoy it how you like it.
Ice, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Throw it in a mixer. I mean, for anybody should really care. I mean, you drink it how you enjoy to drink it.
Sure.
And you actually have that, capability whenever you have a bottle that is as hot as 132. You may not like 132. You may like your stuff kind of around that 50% mark. That's super easy to do.
Right. Normally I start at 100, and then later in the night it gets a little warmer.
Yeah.
And then
we started off with 122 tonight. So
right.
Exactly. Later rest of the night.
Yep. So as we partake in my second pour, let's talk about.
This is my favorite Rumble release actually ever, by the way. Just give you some quick.
What years is it? What years?
This one was distilled 2016. And it was bottled in 2019.
Oh, wow.
So this one was done by Someone Say Whiskey, which is another Facebook group, which I'm sure a lot of people who would be watching this podcast are aware of. But Someone Say Whiskey is just a big group. They do their own private picks, kind of like we do at the Cult. Yeah. And they kind of just try a little bit of everything.
Yeah, great group.
Yeah, this one here, they called it their Crazy Train. And I think if we were to mention this exact pick on the Cult of Balcones Facebook page, it wouldn't. I mean, everybody's gonna be like, "Oh, it's the best one. It's the best one ever."
Sure.
It's just overall just one of the top spirits in my opinion that they've done. Rumble is great. It's a non-whiskey. It's a other spirit. If you see it on the shelf somewhere, it's not gonna be typically where you would find whiskeys. It's just gonna kind of be in its own little spot, which kind of stinks because it's hard to find sometimes.
Sure.
And you go to places like DFW Specs or in Plano, they have a really cool specs there. They have like 4 or 5 single barrel picks just sitting there of Rumble, of the True Blue. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff, but you go to your typical fly-by-night liquor store, it's going to kind of be lost in the mix, which kind of stinks. This here is honey, sugar, and fig. Well, it's mashed together, and then they distill it. And it comes out to just...
I think that's what your third logo is there, is a fig, after the fleur-de-lis. I think that's what it is. But,
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, that's a guess.
That's a really good guess. That would be really cool because if you want to speculate on what's to come this year, 15th, I know they're not going to go light on because, I mean, it's a popular year.
Let's get into that. So it's a big year, all right? 15th anniversary. And... I read an article a couple years ago. Jared kind of hinted at there being a big anniversary. The building that they're in is turning 100 years old.
Right.
It survived some tornadoes in the 50s, and which is a big deal for them.
Right.
Just signifying like the success that building has had, past, present, and in the future. So we know things are coming, right? I tapped into someone in the distillery that helped me out a little bit, and they kind of hinted at October. So October, I think, is going to be a big month for folks that are very big fans. So if you're living somewhere other than Texas, you may want to put that on your map or find someone who can get you a bottle. Because I think at the distillery, you can only get 2, correct, at a time?
Right. So I believe I probably need some folks to fact check me on this, but I do believe that the Texas Legislative Session said that this year, September 1st, is when we're going to start to allow 4 bottles within a 30-day period in the state of Texas. That's great for the consumer, but really not so much for the distiller, because they didn't allow them to produce more to sell publicly, because they're only allowed to sell so much direct to consumer at the distillery itself because of our lovely 3-tier system here in Texas.
Right.
So they're only, I don't know what the allocation is, what that limit is, but I mean, you got to think with the amount of people and the traction that Balcones has gained over the last few years. I mean, that got to be close to hitting that limit now. I can only imagine when you have folks like me who will go buy 4 bottles a month, and my wife will go and buy 4 bottles a month. I mean, it's just gonna. I hate to think about this, but they may have to start saying, "Well, sorry, we can't do any more." Basically private
Self-limiting.
Yeah, they would have a self-limit in order to do these really cool releases.
Right. So what are the fans like whispering about? Like, what are some things that maybe they're not whispering about? What are their hopes? What are things that you're seeing people that you talk to, whether it be admins, long-term fans, what are they hoping to see in 2023?
I think we all want to see age statement fruit, the French oak.
Okay.
I mean, it's got such a following for that specific release, because it is, you'll know why when you taste it, but I mean, it is one of the most unique flavors of their American single malt, is aging it in that French oak barrel. And obviously, it's not a blended whiskey, but they do blend, how many ever different barrels they have of French oak, and they only pick the top ones. I mean, the other ones that don't make the cut for that specific profile that they're going for, get used for something else, or, I mean, possibly even don't. I mean, they're not just going to put something in there, because they taste every single barrel themselves every week. They taste, I think they said 300 to 500 a week. I mean, that's got to be taxing on the folks tasting. I mean, yeah, it sounded like a cool gravy job, but I couldn't imagine, I think that there was a video that was floating around that Jared had mentioned, whatever you eat, the night before and the morning of would definitely change your perception of what you're drinking that day.
Sure.
I just couldn't imagine having an 8 to 5 and the first thing is, well, looks like we're going to be drinking about 14 ounces of cask strength straight from the barrel.
Variety.
Spirits. Yeah, good morning.
Sure.
I mean, that's got to be incredible.
Yeah.
They taste everything in person. They get together. They have a committee, which I'm not sure is all involved in it, but I know Jared and Alex and Gabe.
Yeah. I'd heard that Gabe had 4 or 5 folks that kind of worked hand in hand with him. And Jared was the orchestrator and came in and did high level type supervision. And obviously probably had his hand very heavily in special releases.
Yes.
And then trying different things and all that. So I'm sure that that's kind of the dynamic. And then you have a team that's tasting these things, and it's like you said, it's got to be taxing.
Yeah,
day out.
What's so incredible, I remember talking with someone. They had mentioned that, because I have all these bottles, and I'm always reading labels. I'm a nerd. I like to know what barrel numbers I have in my collection. Which batch. So on like your single barrel skirt, on your just your typical releases, you'll see, well, this label is a terrible example, but it's TB17-1.
Right.
So that would signify it's the first batch. Well, they only had one that year because it's the only annual release they did that year. Yep. So on the True
For this year.
100, you have, batch 1, 2, and 3. That's all there.
Mm-hmm.
And so what the group does is they actually nose, taste, write down notes, and each batch is individually done throughout the year. And they use the previous batch as kind of, their starting point and where they want to blend these other barrels, then proofs them down to 100 proof, and that's the next batch. And side by side, you cannot taste a difference. I'm sure the masterminds over there could maybe pick out a couple of things, but I mean, on a blind test, it was all the same. And I mean, because essentially, you would hope it would be, but for them to actually be using their noses and their tongues and not true science or computers to say, hey, you've got X, Y, and Z here, and it wasn't present in the previous batch. You just have real life people doing all this tasting. I mean, they obviously know what they're doing. If they can make a consistent product off of nose and taste alone every single time.
Right.
I mean, it's just incredible what they're capable of there.
So if you had one more guess about October, so you're hoping French oak. Right?
So, yeah. So, I mean, we've got 3 releases that are still yet to come. So, I mean, we're coming up in August. So if I had to guess, and this is just speculative, I would say August, October, December. But that's just pure speculation, just because of the purchasing limits and kind of letting the hype die down, and then it just makes sense. 18, like I said, was a really crazy year because it was like every month just boom, boom, boom.
Right.
So I think now that they're trying to maybe hype it up, maybe let it kind of settle.
Maybe less releases, but bigger volume. Maybe.
I wouldn't even say volume, and I can't even say quality, because 18 was mind-blowing. I've got the 15 releases so far, and I mean, they are just...
Yeah, but I mean, at the pressure is on, I think they're going to produce. I think they're going to produce.
Oh, yeah.
I personally believe it, because in everything I've read, these guys are so meticulous in what they do, and they're very unique in what they do in the fact that so the master distiller at Jim Beam or Jack Daniels or Maker's Mark, those folks have lineage to go back on.
Right.
These are groundbreaking individuals. They are trailblazers. They took a product that wasn't traditional to Texas, and now it's unique to Texas, and you have this...
Hell, now, I mean, they're like
gigantical.
They're riding the forces in actually making this an American spirit, like a classified American spirit. Because before, you had bourbon, which is great. I mean, that is the American spirit. Well, now we have American single malt. I'm not sure if it's already, got the final gavel click or not, but they're working on getting that like classified as an American spirit, American single malt.
Right. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. The Rumble is awesome, by the way.
I like it.
It's so unique. I think it's in a class of its own.
Yes. To me, it's kind of in between a rum and a corn whiskey, just kind of off the taste, but it's a little bit thinner, in my opinion, than the other two. But you still get that depth and just lingering flavors that just hang out.
Right. I love it. All right. So let's talk about Diageo.
Yeah, I think it's pronounced Diageo.
Diageo.
I mean, I have Diageo. Not 100% sure.
Right.
They acquired Balcones last year sometime. They have brands, I believe, like Jim Beam and Johnny Walker, and then there's a couple of vodkas. It's a huge company.
Sure.
And they acquired Balcones last year, which, we were all kind of like, oh my God,
yeah,
that's a big deal. I mean, kind of, why? Because, we're so heavy on, this is a Texas thing. Well, the great thing about it is it still is.
Sure.
From at least the riffraff that I've heard is they're not touching the production. They're not touching, where they source their grains from. They're not touching any of it. They're letting them run their own thing. They just wanted their brand to be a part of their family.
Right.
And so I'm sure, they came to an agreement, and the people who busted their asses for all these years were, taken care of on that front. I mean, if you have a product that you just love and you did so great at, somebody says, hey, I'd like to acquire you. I mean, it can mean a lot of
Sure, yeah, high level discussions and conversations and negotiations. And,
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, and everybody knows they're an acquisition. You know, you look at everybody. You know, it's not what's best for me,
Right.
Because that's typically the last thing that you're looking at. You're looking at what's best for our employees.
Yeah, and you look at their portfolio. I mean, they have companies and spirits that have been around for a long, long time
And move out of volume.
And so if I'm a fan, I mean, I feel great about having a company that is caretaking
Right.
my favorite distillery, and all the X's and O's say that they're going to be around for a long time.
Right.
You know, they just acquired a company that's only been around for 15 years, albeit an exciting and very fulfilling and
a craft. I mean, they're true craft. I mean, it truthfully is.
Yes. Yeah. Well, one of the things that when I was doing research about it was just the sheer amount of releases they've done. You think about, compare them to other distilleries, just apples and apples. You know, how many distilleries put out this many releases, the uniqueness, and the collaboration. They've collaborated with wineries,
Yes.
for a Dawn and Dusk. They've collaborated with breweries for a Shiner release, right?
Yep. They did Shiner. They did 3 different Shiner releases. They did Dusk and Dawn with Hack Winery. Is that how you pronounce that? I'm not really sure.
Gulf Coast Winery.
Great wine, by the way. Then they did the Shiner Bock collab. So they did 3 releases of those. They did 24-month, 36-month, and their final one with a cash strength, which is, oh my God, it's so good. And then they did St. Arnold's Brewery as well. The
Oh, wow. Okay. That's right. Yes.
Yeah, which Grand Cru was kind of one of those for me as well. When I first noticed it, I was like, this ain't for me.
All right.
And then I tasted it, and my mind was blown. What was kind of weird, I remember it was February the 5th of 2021 when I tasted that bottle for the first time.
What stands out for that?
I was in Broken Bow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, we went up to Broken Bow that day, and I hated it. I was like, I cannot believe I was so pumped.
Right.
The nose just killed me.
Yeah.
And then I tasted it, and it just all came together, and it was just mind-blowing. I was like, okay, I need to stop losing faith.
Right.
I just trust the fact that everything I drink of Balcones is just going to be excellent.
Yeah. So cool, man. Well, look, man, I really appreciate you coming on, being our guinea pig.
Yeah.
You did great, man. There's a lot of history, and I love supporting a Texas distillery with so many releases, so unique. I think a lot of people that have tried it dive straight in, and the folks that haven't yet, they ought to. They ought to try it. Find somebody like you that pulls you in and gets you to liking it. But again, appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming on and giving us your expertise.
If you ever have a part 2, man, I'm telling you, there's so many more bottles. It was so difficult to pick, and I was like, man, and just in my brain, I've got so much going on because there's so many different products they have. It's just so incredible. I just hope you really enjoy the one that one.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. We've got a couple more folks that I've already lined up for the next couple of podcasts. We're going to try to do these every couple of weeks until we see maybe more energies around it. We have a female distiller that's going to come on that's very educated in the distilling process, spirits. She leads a lot of different groups and tastings. We have an EMT that does lung and heart transplants coordination. We thought that would be something interesting that people would want to know. We have an individual that helps women that are trafficked, and we're going to have her on because very passionate. Again, this is Spirit Squared, so we're going to introduce the spirit. We're going to talk a little bit about it, but we're going to focus more of our time in the spirit and the individual that we have as a guest. So thanks so much for tuning in.